Welcome everyone to our work session for Binghamton City Council on Monday, August 30th. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Scringy,
Present.
Councilwoman Riley,
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Present.
Councilman Burns, Councilman Strawn,
Present.
Councilman Scanlon,
Present.
President Restinetti.
Present.
That's all 7 here.
Oh, and I do have to read this here. Before we begin, we have some required notifications. Please note that the city abides by New York State and the CDC's requirement that unvaccinated individuals continue to wear masks indoors and remain at a 6-foot social distance, which includes the City Hall and the public meetings like this one. If you're vaccinated, you do not have to wear a mask during this public meeting or be socially distanced. However, if you appear ill or present with COVID-19 symptoms, staff may ask you to leave, distance, or wear a mask regardless of your vaccination status. This meeting is being recorded with video and audio. Okay, so moving on, we do have folks from Vanadillo Group to go up first, but I think the chief has just a 2-minute RL to talk to us about, and he's got to run. So, do you mind? Go ahead.
All right, this is a GIVE grant, so it's on the mic, and we've been getting it for 5 years. Before that, it was called Impact. It's for gun violence, although our gun violence compared around the state is one of the lowest in the state, so they also allow us to use the funding for aggravated assaults. They fund the crime analysts and the fringe benefits in the Intel Center. They fund a first-grade patrolman position and his fringe benefits for the field intelligence officer. And they also give us $24,000 for overtime, and along with $4,000 for sub-temp workups for those of you who don't know is problem properties that they assess and make recommendations. So I think it totals $231,000. We administer the grant. The county gets a little bit of money, but we get $231,000. I think the county's gets less than $75,000. The total grant's around $300,000. If there's any questions, yes.
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Chief. Thanks for being here. So I heard you say that this would fund a patrolman position. Is that correct?
The first grade patrolman it always has, yes.
Okay. Sorry. I thought that I read that it was. Oh, okay. So I'm just a little bit confused because it says full salary and fringe benefits for a civilian crime analyst and BPD FIO investigator. Is that a separate position?
There's 2 positions.
There's 2 positions.
A civilian crime analyst, that's the first one you read, and the second one is a police officer, that's the FIO, the Field Intelligence Officer. So it funds 2 positions with their fringe benefits.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Riley?
Council President. Hi there, Chief Zukoski. Please clarify, this is the grant we talked about earlier in the year with the team that talked about using this in certain target areas of Binghamton to reduce crime and by increasing their presence at Boys and Girls Club. Is that this same grant?
I don't believe so. Most of the city falls into the guidelines, and I'm trying to think. Mostly it's the north side, the north and Edwards over that area. But they're pretty flexible. If we have a problem any place in the city, they don't have an issue with us using the overtime to provide extra patrols and resources at that area.
Okay, and then clarify. I think I heard you say something about they surveil problem properties. Is that
no,
what
not
you said?
surveil. They go out and they they assess them. And there's a big workup, pictures of property, code violations, complaints there, any nuisance properties, pretty much. We don't surveil them, sit there. They go out as a team, the code enforcement goes, the fire department goes. It's not just police officers, it's a SEPTED team.
Okay.
That actually, we lead the state in it. The state has asked us on 2 occasions to put it on statewide for other police agencies, actually some from outside the state came, but it's assessing problem properties within the city. That it's a team effort between the fire department, code enforcement, all different agencies throughout the city.
Okay.
Go and assess the problem and try to assess it with the landlord. If the landlord's cooperative, assess lighting, things like that.
And this is my first time hearing of it, honestly.
Okay.
So in terms of the process, the police would go first, then code would?
No, we all go together.
Oh.
There's a team of trained officers. There's not all of them go, so they all go at the same time. They pick, if you call us and say, I don't know, 30 North Street's a problem, there's been all sorts of problems there, it's run down, code enforcement problems, they'll go out as a team. There's nothing secret about it. Everybody goes together.
Awesome. I'll be reaching out to you for some reports.
Certainly.
Thank you.
They do a good workup, take pictures and do a full report on every property they do.
Okay. Thank you.
It's not really criminal in nature, but if there's
No,
criminal
but
complaints there,
again,
yes.
we know that, we've been having an increased number of calls for code, and I didn't know law enforcement was a part of that process. So, I mean.
It's our process and they're part of that, but.
Oh, okay.
Just
Okay.
saying, it doesn't matter, I'm just joking, but,
Oh.
no, it's a team effort through all the city, all the departments throughout the city.
Okay. Well, I will be following up. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilwoman Freeman?
Thank you. I have a follow-up question actually to that, because I also admittedly was not aware of this team effort. So would that be sort of an escalation? Like, would one of those teams go out for example, would code go out first, and then if it's a repeated problem, then you would assemble this team? Or this is like, could be the first time somebody calls and then all of these people are.
It's usually a repeat that, you keep getting complaints as somebody in your district. So you call us and say, I've had 10 complaints here. So we'll look and see if we've had any complaints there, but the code gets complaints on their own. Just because they don't get a complaint doesn't mean we all get involved. This is like a continuously nuisance property that is just turned up, in any one of your districts that after reported, repeated complaints. Usually it comes from council or the mayor's office that they're getting a lot of complaints about a certain rundown property. We don't target any places ourselves. Basically we get a call either from one of you or an email or from the mayor or the
Okay,
office.
so that wouldn't be, the first time someone calls code and.
No.
Okay. Okay,
It's a
thank-
lot of work. It takes a team effort. As I said, there's a
Right.
full report and they go out for it's a lot of, no. It's just like somebody calls up, we go up. No, that's not how it works.
Right. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Councilman Scaringi.
Thank you, Madam President. Thanks for coming down, Chief.
Sure.
So just to kind of formally get on the record, this is incredibly important as it relates to SEPTED and its success, correct, Chief?
Yes.
Yeah. So just to kind of put this out there, right, SEPTED is a school of thought, if you will, which is community policing by environmental design. And the purpose of it is a collective, proactive approach, and it has multiple departments, whether it's police, fire, code, zoning, vacant property, mayor's office, corp counsel, and so on and so forth. It is not used as a means of anything for individual isolated incidents at any property. They actually go off of information that they receive, whether it be from us, whether it be from the mayor's office, whether it be police reports that show property X had multiple violations, right? So it's a collective approach to try to deal with something that has a pattern of behavior, not an individualistic incident. Correct, Chief?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Chief. Okay, so let's move on to our discussion regarding ARPA funds, and we have someone here from Bonadio Group. Hi,
Hi, good evening.
good evening, thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Do you want me to do just a quick overview? And then, I know you have some questions, but, so I'm Greg Evans from the Bonadio Group. I'm a partner out of the Syracuse office. Currently, I'm working with approximately 26 local governments, so you're not alone. There's a lot of questions out there. Just in general terms, the rescue and recovery funds can be used in 6 different buckets, and that's public health response, addressing negative economic impacts, premium pay for essential workers, broadband infrastructure, water and sewer infrastructure, and to replace public sector revenue loss, and to provide government services to the extent of that loss. So I just want to kind of expand on that last bucket just a little bit, because this has been an area where there has been a lot of questions. So at this point, I think Chuck has stated that that revenue loss that we agree on is approximately $12 million. And really, it's as broad as it sounds, the eligible uses for that. Government services, so, and that's exactly what it's meant for. There are a couple of things you can't use it for, and that's for additional pension contributions, which you wouldn't likely do anyway. You cannot use it for a local share of a federal grant. You cannot pay existing debt, and you cannot pay judgments with it. The other thing you can't do is not spend it, which means you can't just drop it into your reserve funds or your rating day fund. So that calculation is very detailed, as outlined by the Treasury Department, and I've gone through that, and as I've said, I've done this with 26 different local governments at this point, so I know the calculation pretty well. I'm very comfortable with what Chuck has presented at this point. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Councilman Scringer.
So much for coming down. I just want to reiterate, so you said 26 local governments, correct?
Right.
That's 26 local governments all in New York State?
Correct. Right.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilman Burns?
Yes, hi, thank you for coming down. Now, I understand that losses, we have to make the city whole, and I'm all for that, all for the money on the infrastructure, et cetera. But I couldn't quite get that the capital projects fund. Now, if we're spending money on capital projects, then the fund would go down. But how did COVID affect that fund?
Right. So, and that's sort of a common question. So that calculation is in terms of revenue loss. That calculation is taking 2019 and comparing it to 2020. So that's where we end up with that roughly $12 million. And I think, some of the misconception there is it's not really making the city whole. It's meant to be spent prospectively, so meaning after March of 2021, those dollars are meant to go out the door and not back into fund balance. So, in terms of, capital projects, anything under government services that the city would normally do would be eligible under that $12 million. And possibly some of the other categories as well. Obviously, water and sewer is one that's clearly defined. Some of the community type projects would also fall under that, as a lot of the city is in a qualified census tract, which is another carve out. So does that help with your question?
Well, I still don't see where, if we have lost $12 million in COVID, and we currently have approximately $12 million in our rainy day fund, wouldn't that rainy day fund be gone? Wouldn't we have to have spent that money to go be down that much money?
Not necessarily. So it's a loss in revenue. You obviously had a reduction in expenditures too. So you got to think about both sides of that equation. So it's not a dollar for dollar replacement. It's just meant to replace some of the funding that you may have spent otherwise.
Okay. And I've noticed, we got a printout here from Chuck, was nice enough to give us this printout, but now we are spending $2 million, we've got $23 million. We're going to get $23 million next year. So we're spending $2 million of next year's money. Is the mayor, with the mayor accepting next year's $23 million now, could he spend this money, next year's money, if he didn't accept the money now, or how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so your allotment is $46 million. So that it's just the cash flow that you're discussing there, the $23 million. Half this year, half next year. You can certainly spend the whole thing this year and have a receivable at the end of the year for that $23 million. There's no, let me say it another way, there's no parameters in terms of, other than it needs to be spent by 12/31/24, or obligated by then, and then completely spent by 2026. So that's the period of availability, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and the other municipalities that you're working with, are they spending the money as quickly as we appear to be spending it?
It varies. Some of them are. Some of them have projects that are lined up and ready to go, and they're anxious to do that. Others are waiting just because they haven't been far enough into that planning process.
Right. Are they, we have this new variant coming in.
Right.
It's going to take effect. Are some of them trying to save money to see what happens to that variant?
Certainly, I've seen that. I've seen people set aside money for that, absolutely. And that, of course, is an eligible use.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Friedman?
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We did have a lot of questions as a body, so this is hopefully will be enlightening. So the first two questions that I have, to follow up on Councilman Burns's question is I was also surprised by the timeline of the two tranches. Is there and from what I read, we should be expecting the second tranche next year, right? But it came, we held, that came up for a vote accepting the second tranche last business meeting. So is there a reason why that is seemingly expedited, or why we received that so early?
Yeah, I can't really speak to your procedures on the vote, but I mean, that is the timeline.
That we would accept both tranches within a few months of each other?
Again, that's sort of a city thing. I don't know, Chuck, if you want to speak to that, but
Aviva, when most communities don't have a mayor that's done at the end of this year. Most of them are accepting the 46 million or their total amount up front, okay? Basically, the government gave us $23 million in cash, okay, and then the next 23 has come in there. If we were to spend more than $23 million, we'd have to have that cash from some other source right now, probably our fund balance or whatever cash we have. But I don't think this is out of the ordinary what we're doing. We should have came down, as I said the last time I came down here, we should have came down and accepted all 46 million the first time. Okay, we brought it in, I got the 26 million, or the 23 million in faster than I expected, so I wanted to make sure I brought down to 23 without doing more research.
Okay. Oh, sorry, I do have another question. So, one thing that I think we wanted to ask was about, so you said you can't just put the money in the general fund, right, a rainy day fund. But what we had, what had come across our desk was moving $12 million into the general fund to make it unencumbered, so we could free it up to spend it on kind of whatever we wanted? Is that something that other municipalities are doing, or what? Can you tell us your thoughts on
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
process?
So that again is the revenue loss calculation. So, and when we talk about, it's not really unencumbered, it's basically limited to those few restrictions that I talked about. So, essentially, that's exactly the position you want to be in, because those other 5 buckets I mentioned have some significant compliance requirements and detailed regulations that go with them, whereas you're eligible to take that 12 million and use it for, again, the term government activities. So as a council, I mean, that's, if I'm sitting in your shoes, just to give you my opinion, is that's great. Now we have $12 million. We can do what we want in terms of the city and not have to worry about those federal regulations that come attached to it.
Mm-hmm. And that would apply even for projects that were initiated, that have not, like, were, prior to the ARPA funding?
Yes, so it would have to be for projects where dollars were actually spent after March of 2021.
Okay, so we could not then move money into the general fund to then fund a project that was initiated prior to ARPA. Am I understanding correctly?
Well, you couldn't fund a project that was previously paid for. Let's put it that way.
Okay, but we could take that money and allocate it to a project that is proposed to happen that is not necessarily related to COVID.
Yes. So
Okay.
that again is that definition of government activities, which is separate from those other buckets which specifically address COVID. So let's say, I guess I'll give you an example. Let's say that the city actually did not have any revenue loss. Then we would have to look at those other buckets in terms of, all right, how do we spend money in terms of those other 5 buckets that have those regulations attached to it. So, in my opinion, the guidance is deliberately vague so that the city can spend money basically as they want.
Okay. I mean, hopefully you'll understand my personal skepticism at trying to evade those guidelines.
Yeah.
The other bullet point regulations, that was a
Right.
concern that a lot of my constituents
Right.
came with was, well, these previous 5 bullet points come with guidance that they're hoping that we would follow. So that's just, to give you context of like where my line of questioning
Yep.
is going.
Yep.
And I do actually have a question directly from one of my constituents, who was wondering about, in your experience, you said you've been working with 26 other municipalities. What is the best practice, or can you speak to best practices for a municipality to allocate ARPA money in terms of developing and implementing protocol for accessible and inclusive public input? So do you have, like with the other municipalities that you're working with, is there any structure to formally gather public input and formulate our plans based on that, or is it purely top-down?
It's mostly top-down, to be honest with you. I have seen some smaller towns and villages who, have invited people in to comment publicly. I haven't seen a lot of formal requests for public comment at this point. And again, it's relatively new too. Everyone is basically in the planning stage, and again, various levels of planning at this point, so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman Strawn?
Thank you for coming. I was just going to ask you, is this, you said that it's less or is it none as far as, I guess my question is this subject to review by the U.S. Treasury, like a large PPP loan or something like that is by the SBA? Are we going to have to, as part of our audit process, single audit? Is there a process that this does get reported back to the Treasury?
Yeah, so I kind of have a two-part answer to that. So there is reporting that's required. In fact, the report Chuck filed today, the first report, in terms of how you spent that money. And at this point, it's obviously minimal, but those reports will go on quarterly. Obviously, we're assuming the Treasury will review those reports, but in terms of single audit, yes. So if you spend over $750,000 in federal funds, you're subject to the single audit. And this would likely end up being a major program that would be reviewed by us as your auditors.
So the review process comes through our audit process, not necessarily a separate review from the Treasury Department.
Right. And it's like every other grant that you get, it certainly could be audited down the road by the federal government.
Okay. So my favorite principle, so you believe that this transfer, this revenue is substance and form are compliant with the, and I think it's obvious, but I just wanted to state that you, not just the form of it, but the substance of what the legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's government services. So, speaking directly to that $12 million related to that revenue loss calculation, I believe, just throwing in my own opinion there, that it's deliberately vague to help those governments that have lost revenue so that they can do those one-time projects and not affect, your normal tax appropriation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilwoman Riley?
You, Council President, and again, thank you for being here. You did mention that you are working with several municipalities and government entities. Can you tell me if you're working with anyone, because it's all public information, nevertheless, that meets the, which would be an exemplar or a model for Binghamton with the same type of funding receipt and census tract, what have you?
We were just recently engaged by the city of Utica. Certainly, definitely a lot of qualified census tract there. We are also working with the city of Troy, which again does have qualified census tracts. I would say at this point, both of those governments are in the planning stages of spending.
Okay.
I could certainly, follow up with you though, and, as they start, making those plans.
No, that helps because again, it tells us who you've partnered with, who you've been working with, and if the experience then aligns with what we're presenting as well. So thank you for that.
Councilman Scaringi?
Thank you, Madam President. Just to add on to that, good question from Councilwoman Riley. So when you say you're working with the city of Troy and the city of Binghamton, well, obviously the city of Binghamton, but the city of Utica as well. So you had mentioned that they're into their planning stages, correct?
Right.
So it actually sounds like they are not as far in the process, or maybe about the same as us, correct?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So you citing them is not so much about, and I'm going to steal Councilwoman Riley's really good word, it doesn't sound like you're saying they're exemplars as so much as they are people who have solicited your services, because it would seem to me the most exemplar thing that any municipality could do would literally be to follow the red letter of the law as it's written, right? So I think it's a good question that you're asking, but I'm not sure what you mean I don't know, maybe if you could just expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my point is they would be a model to look at and share ideas with at this point. I don't think any of us are at the point where we're following the letter of the law because nothing's really been spent.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're trying to do is making sure, though, is those expenditures are in compliance with the guidance.
Right. But so just as a follow-up to that, are you citing them again as examples of municipalities that have solicited your good services, or you're citing them as examples that there is something that they are currently doing with respect to their planning processes that either we are not or we should be paying attention to? Because there's a big difference between those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think my point is simply that they do have qualified census tracts, which is part of, outlined in the guidance.
Right.
And it is something that we're working on to see, how those eligible expenditures will fit in. And
Right.
it could be a good model for Binghamton. Let's put it that way.
Right. So, but we also have qualified census tracts, so we categorically were in the same manner.
Right.
Right. So again, just to get on the record, it's not inherently that Utica or Troy is doing something that we aren't, but it's that we're categorically in the same track.
Right.
And the one similarity we all share is that we hired your great services to kind of shepherd us through this process.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilman Strawn?
Sophia, can I answer this?
Oh, yeah.
Gio and Angela, one of the things too that Greg didn't mention, but Troy and Utica are almost exact matches to the city of Binghamton. Troy, when the state does any compare cities, us and Troy are like exact matches.
Yeah.
Same college town, same number of people, same poverty level.
Those demographic
Yes.
factors, exactly,
Yes.
yeah. No, and I appreciate that extent, and I apologize, Madam President. What I just want to get on the record is there's a very big difference between those two things, and I don't want it out there at the expense of being blunt. The implication is Utica and or Troy are doing things, quote, better than we are, right? I wasn't saying you were trying to imply that. That's my question. I just want to make sure that that's where you're coming from.
Right.
Thank you.
Is there any municipalities that are using this calculation as a ceiling for the funds, or is there anybody that aren't using that calculation, or they're using it as just a guide, or is everyone using it as taking that to the max?
Yeah, I would say everyone that is eligible to take advantage of it is taking advantage of it. Again, because you're pulling out some of those restrictions that would otherwise be there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Chuck?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Okay.
I wanted something, Greg and I have had a lot of conversations over today trying to file. Greg and I have had a lot of conversations today trying to go through and file the quarterly report and stuff. And Greg mentioned something to me that I thought was important. A lot of people have some different ideas on how we're spending these funds, but I think this one section is quite interesting for everybody.
So what Chuck's referring to specifically is related to the qualified census tract that I've mentioned a couple times now, and the community center that's being proposed. And one of the eligible services under that would fall under that bucket would be building stronger neighborhoods and communities. So in my mind, that community center would certainly fall under that particular bucket. So, and what that means to you is it would not be part of that 12 million that we're saying is government services. So it would be part of the rest of that, roughly 34 million that's out there. Which again, I think is an advantage to the city, because again, we're freeing up or unrestricting funds for other things.
Okay, thank you. Then, do you have another question? I have a Yeah, okay.
Thank you. So I have a lot of questions, just always. So in that case, I was sort of, when I was imagining the community center, which is proposed in my district, I was imagining that fund, if we did vote to take some of that funding, $3 million or so, that would come from the 12 million that we're moving into the general fund to free it from these restrictions. So in that case, I guess actually this might not be, well, so, okay, sorry, I'm processing out loud as I'm asking this question. So if then we were to take the $3 million from, just straight from the encumbered ARPA funds, then what else could that $12 million unencumbered funding be, like what kinds of projects are other municipalities using their freed up money for?
So, I'll give you a couple examples. A real easy one is normal infrastructure like roads would not fall under those other buckets, but it would under that 12 million. So you could then use it for that. Another simple one is, equipment. Whether it's DPW equipment, those are government services. So those are the type of things that would fall under that particular category.
Even though those things are not directly related to
Right.
the COVID pandemic?
Absolutely, right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Again, Council President. So I do have another question. So say we, based upon your review and assessment of the language where you shared about the community center may be approved per your interpretation, say we allocate that money from the fund as an approved use of the 46 million, and we receive a significant grant from the Angela Riley Fund. That money that we've then used from that fund, the ARPA fund, then goes back into what? It goes back into the ARPA line, or it goes back into general?
I guess to sort of clarify. Okay. So if you make a decision, you're going to use $3 million for that community center.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we're going to pull that out and we're going to claim that as an eligible expenditure. If subsequently you decide that you didn't want to do that, then yes, that $3 million would go back into the let's call it the balance of those ARPA funds.
And it would be, again, subject to the appropriate use, right, even if we've surpassed the deadline for the first tranche?
Yeah, so the period for the ARPA funds goes through 12/31/2024.
Okay. The entirety.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Angela, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on something. If we were to spend the $3 million on the community center, okay, and we were to spend that money, are you saying that you would want to reverse that, like
if
next
it were
year?
encumbered and not spent?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. I think no other questions? Thank you for coming.
Thanks for your
Appreciate all
time.
the information. Okay, so we're moving on to, I don't see Liana here. Oh, there she is. Okay, Liana. There she is. Yep, she is. Hi, Liana. How are you? Good, good. Tell us about RL 21-177. Speak a little louder. Is it on?
Now can you hear me? Okay. Okay, so we're looking to expand residency to Broome County. The reason being is that we have had extreme difficulty filling positions. We've had some positions posted since April, and they're still open. We aren't getting the qualified candidates from the city to apply, no matter how much outreach we do to city organizations. And I'm talking about like nonprofits stationed in the city of Binghamton, the Broome County Job Force, they help out. So we want to expand it. Once the county expanded theirs, I thought, oh, maybe this is our shot to bring it to city council. So the county expanded theirs to the contiguous New York counties. Yeah, I don't know what else you guys want to know. Maybe, I don't know if everyone knows this, but someone can request a waiver. So in the past 10 new hires, in the past like 8 months, only 2 out of those 10 hires lived in the city of Binghamton. Everyone else was granted a waiver, either 6 months or permanent waiver from the Civil Service Commission. And we don't bring waivers to commission unless it takes a really long time to get applications. So, and once someone is permanent, they can move outside of city. There's nothing keeping them here. So if someone does move in, a lot of times they move right out once they're permanent. So that's why we're seeking the county residency.
Does anyone have any questions? Ms. Pringy?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Liana.
Yep.
So you had mentioned 10 positions in the last 8 months?
So we had 10 hires. Did they
10
all
hires.
stay?
Stay? No.
No.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Good point.
Yeah.
During the application process for each of those respective positions and hires, does your office receive applications from people that live out of the city of Binghamton, to just kind of give you a general sense of, you know, hey, we're getting applications, some from Binghamton, but others that are in Broome County or something like that?
Yeah. So we get, it really depends on the position.
Yeah.
Some positions we get tons of city applicants, and we will prefer them over.
Right.
Even going forward, they will be preferred. Sometimes we get 0 city residents and all just county residents. And we sometimes get out-of-state residents as well, depending on the position.
Yeah. So you stole my second question, though. Regardless of this change, which sometimes for a professional skill set is needed,
Yeah.
City of Binghamton residents will always receive
Preference.
primary preference.
Yes,
Thank you,
correct.
Liana. Thank you,
Correct.
Madam President.
Councilwoman Freeman? And
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, Liana, thanks for coming. Okay, so my question is, in terms of the process of applying now versus the proposed changes. So you said that now there's a City of Binghamton requirement, but the person could apply for a waiver if they lived in Broome County, or would you suggest?
If we're having difficulty fill a position, for instance, I'm going to pick on Ken right now. Ken had a position open for 10 months. 10 months. No city applicants applied. We had one Johnson City person apply. Ken requested the waiver. Sometimes it's the department head, sometimes it's the individual before they even get the interview, or sometimes it's my department.
Okay, so would you then, as it stands now, would you do outreach or recruit to Broome County residents and outside of city residents?
We do, generally, we post it on our website, Indeed, certain positions we put on LinkedIn, depending on the position, depends on where we send it. But more recently, every position gets sent out everywhere.
Okay, so with the proposed changes to open it from the city of Binghamton to Broome County with a preference for city of Binghamton residents, am I understanding correctly in that, in essence, you are sort of just removing the
The waiver.
step of having to apply for a waiver, whereas
'Cause-
everything else would kind of logistically stay the same?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
waivers, it'd be nice not to have to do them because Civil Service Commission only meets once a month. So if we want to hire someone within 2 weeks, but they need a waiver, we have to wait till the next Civil Service Commission. Say we just had the Civil Service Commission, that department's waiting another month where they could have been waiting 10 months as it is already.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that.
Yep.
And my last question is there any sort of formal, like, codifying what preferring a City of Binghamton applicant would look like?
I think I put in, sorry.
I don't
I just
know.
wanted to see what
I mean, I know it says there, City of Binghamton residents will be given preference, something, I don't know if that's the exact wording, but, let's say you have two applicants that are otherwise identical, one lives in the city, one doesn't, obviously preference would be giving, offering the position first to the City of Binghamton resident. But if everything else is not equal, then is there, and I don't know if you've worked out what this would look like, but is there sort of a process or an official, rubric, I guess, to figure out what preference would look like?
The difficulty in answering that is a lot of times it's job dependent,
Okay.
right? If I'm talking about a laborer in parks, the odds are the person who lives in the city is going to get it, 9.9 times out of 10. If you're talking about an assistant corporation counsel, they're never going to be equal. You're always going to choose the person that you think is the best fit, has the best experience. So a lot of it is job dependent. I mean, that would be my initial response to it.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree with that. And yeah, I don't know how else to say it, but typically right now, we wait months on months. Maybe we just reduce that to 1 month, looking for city residents rather than non-city. You also have to factor into certain jobs have to be posted for a certain amount of time dependent on their union contract. So that will also help city residents apply as well.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, Councilman Burns?
Thank you, Madam President. Would this be for police and fire as well?
Correct.
Because, I was on the
Right, fire isn't subject to that at present, is it?
No, they are.
That they are immediately before they're permanent? Okay, I'm sorry.
So I was on the police collaborative,
Yes.
and we passed the police collaborative here amongst us, and in that, we were trying to incentivize police to stay more than a year. So isn't this now going against what we passed for that? Or
No,
could we-
I wouldn't say that because they did include a residency incentive for police officers in the contract. So I think that helps.
In the new contract.
In the new contract.
Right.
So I don't think that will help, especially when, I hate to say it, but a lot of times they move in, once they get a temporary month-to-month lease, and then they
Yeah.
leave. This will actually help with recruitment of police officers. We don't have a problem with fire recruitment right now. I'm going to knock on wood right now. And most of them live in the city anyways. But the police, I feel like this will help with recruitment and help get more qualified police officers that to take the tests and to hire. Or maybe get some to transfer in, or stay.
Right. Well, Syracuse, the mayor, in his negotiations with the union there, he actually they put in a 5-year, they have to stay in the city before they're allowed to move out. And we're always talking about community policing. And of course, wouldn't it be great if the police were coaching their children at Rec Park and not out in Windsor, to be part of the community and not part of the community. So,
I understand that.
is there a way to separate the departments on this?
We could. I'd have to take it back to Civil Service Commission. Because
And I suspect that goes back to the collective bargaining agreement rather than,
Yeah, and-
rather than the
Right.
charter.
and that
We
is,
just passed that,
and you
right,
just
right.
yeah. So
Right.
that one would have to be.
So that would be down the road on a different
Yeah.
agreement. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Councilwoman Riley?
You, Council President. Hello. I do have a question. Have you done an assessment of the other municipalities and towns in Broome?
Yeah.
And are we the only ones with this
So,
stipulation?
We're the only ones that have our own Civil Service Commission, and Broome County mostly handles all the other municipalities within the county. So theirs is county-based. I will say I did it with other municipalities. We have our outreach. So I wrote them down. So, City of Norwich, White Plains, Greene County, Delaware, and Town of Colony. Those are just some examples of locations that within the past couple years have expanded their residency from a small, their own district to broaden it. They're not the only ones. There are a lot out there. It's not the solution for hiring and retention. It's just another step in that direction to get more people to apply and more actual qualified candidates to stay.
Councilwoman, was your question, though, or other municipalities in Broome County, do any of them have residency requirements? Was that your question?
That was my question.
Oh, it's
Do you-
the county and now the surrounding 5 counties because they're all dealt with by Broome County.
And you answered it.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
So-
I just want to make sure you.
I know,
Sorry.
I know. My questions confuse you, so I'm accustomed to that. So thank you, Ken.
Any other questions? Thank you, Liana.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Leon.
Mr. Paddock, you're up next. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm here tonight for RL 21-181 to amend the 2021 DPW repairs, vehicle repairs budget. Reason I'm here is, and I think I said this during our capital, when I think I was here about a month ago, a lot of our equipment has become older, but I did put a preventative maintenance plan in when I started here. Prior, some of this work was done in November. I start in May with snow removal equipment because there's so much to it. I go through everything from brakes to the hoses to actually rebuilding the snow plows, the blades. I want to go through every vehicle so that when I take it off the road, it's ready to go, I say on or about November 1st. We do have some new vehicles, but the majority of our equipment is aged, and if we don't do PM on it, this is where this is coming from. So, and that's not just snow removal equipment, it's sanitation vehicles. There's 7 vehicles that run 5 days a week. We have a backup of 3. We have street sweepers that run pretty much 5 days a week, sometimes weekends. And the other concern I have is that the cost of parts and basically the ability to even secure these parts is becoming very difficult. I ordered 2 months ago chains for our salters, and I just got them today. So we need money in these accounts because obviously some of these manufacturers and people we do business are not going to wait. So unfortunately, I'm here to move some money around, and it's out of, necessary so I can keep operating, so that I ensure that not only our day-to-day vehicles, but the snow operations are ready to go. I think it's an important part. I think that's why we were successful last year when we didn't have the total breakdowns. It was a tough winter still, but sometimes it's the lower snow that really puts, the damage to like the plow blades and stuff is extensive, where we're trying to rebuild them versus trying to go out and buy new ones. So there is cost to this, and this is where I'm coming from.
Any questions? Councilman Freeman?
Thank you, Madam President. Hi, thanks for coming. So I just want to clarify that this money would be in addition to or for different vehicles than the money that was brought last work session, which was $1.5 million altogether. This would be.
Yeah, these are just the repairs to doing our day-to-day vehicles today. When we talked, I think for the 1.5, that was just, to replace some garbage trucks that were, I think I told you, were 2011 and even some 2008. So this is just to basically run day-to-day and to make sure that we can ensure that these vehicles can stay on the road and that we have snow removal equipment as well as sanitation equipment, water, sewer equipment that we repair. I think a lot of times people don't realize that part of these repairs and maintenance are also vehicles that are housed with the planning department, engineering department, code department, water, sewer, parks and recreation. So it's not really just DPW. And we've tried to extend our snow removal operation to capture water, sewer to become part of our operation because it gives us more resources to do this. So when we do that, obviously we're upgrading some of those vehicles as well.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Madam President. Thank you. John, thank you for coming down. This is something I know you've talked about for quite a while now, just in the broadest sense. I definitely, and I think some of my colleagues will probably concur, due to that proactiveness, we definitely saw a difference in the snow removal during winter last year. So I'm really happy to personally hear that, that you're prioritizing that. So keep that up.
Well, and I'm not a commissioner that works from my office, truthfully. I'm on the road. I'm at the DPW garage, I can say, pretty much every morning, assessing those situations, working with my supervisor, working with the parts department. But I am concerned with the cost of parts and the ability to obtain these parts. So I think it's positive that we're starting ahead, but we got to try to build some type of inventory so that if something goes down, we're not without a vehicle for, a number of days. We've even outfitted our 3 garbage trucks now that in a heavier snow, now we have 3 of them, which, to be honest, I give the mayor credit there too. A lot of people didn't think it worked, but once we got them out there, and it's not just big streets. You can use them with the right operators in it. So again, to outfit those 2, there's cost and, associated with it.
Well done.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night. Chuck, you're up. So we have RL 21-178.
Okay, 178 is a ordinance to amend the capital fund budget to close out grant lines that we can no longer use. This was for an ADA curb and sidewalk improvement program. We've spent all that we could, and there's $27,000 and a penny left that we can't spend, so I'm asking to close that out and close out the revenue line.
Any questions on that one? Okay, thank you. Next one.
179 is an ordinance to amend the 21 refuse fund revenue and expenses. We've actually collected more revenue than we anticipated this year from bag sales, but we don't have enough money in the budget to buy new bags, and that's due to the fact that the oil price has gone up, which affects the price of these bags, and they're up almost 20% from the beginning of the year. So I'm asking to move some money from the revenue line that we're over budget so far and put it into the expense line.
Any questions? Councilman Burns? All right, you guys figure it out. I'll just stand back here.
Chuck,
Yes, Councilman Burns.
how much money do we make on bags?
I don't know the
I
exact.
asked a question.
I don't know the
That's
exact
why
number.
age counts.
I can send that to you. I don't know the exact number.
Okay, ballpark?
It's like 80%. Okay.
Okay.
So I
All
think if a bag cost us, say 20 cents, we probably sold it for $1. And I'm not.
Yeah.
Don't hold me to that. I can get you those numbers though.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, what's important though for everyone to know is the bags do not cover the cost of garbage collection.
Oh.
The bags cover the cost of going it to the landfill. We're paying all the costs for the trucks, the
Right.
labor to collect it. That's an important aspect. Everyone thinks the bags cover
Right.
the cost of everything. It does not.
Yeah, for
Yes.
like for those at home, I was at the Porch Fest, right? Several people said, well, the bags, the green bags. And I try to explain to them, you know, it is a problem because of the squirrels get in them and all that. But that Mrs. Jones only has one bag, therefore she's only paying for her part of the tipping fee. Student housing, they've got 10 bags, so they're paying more. That it's about the tipping fee. But it's hard to explain to folks, you know?
And you can explain this to them that out of their taxes, 2.7 million of it is for garbage collection.
All right, thank you.
No other questions? Got it? Okay. Next one, Chuck. 183.
183, an ordinance to amend the 21 fire budget for relocation expenses. This is for the temporary fire station over on, no, it's not Holly, I don't know this.
Carroll Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we need $32,000 that hopefully is going to get us through the rest of the year for rent and utilities for the building. And I'm taking that out of the contingency line to pay for it.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Next one.
186, is that it?
Yep.
Okay, this is an ordinance to cover the expenses for the 2 individuals that are working part-time on finishing up the joint sewage treatment plant project for all the payments we do, so setting things up through EFC. That's a total of $10,900. I expect this to totally be done. I'm hoping by the end of October, but I got this covered out through the end of November just in case.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Next one is 187.
187, I know I brought this down to Lee this morning. I've had open positions in my office all year. I was able to find a person who will fill the position of an assistant comptroller. She accepted at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. So I scrambled this morning and over the weekend to figure out how I could do this and what would work. And basically, I'm asking to keep on the assistant comptroller that's currently there part-time till the end of October, I believe it is. This person is going to start on September 27th, so there'll be a month transition to help train her. And I have another person, a person that retired last year, who's in helping me fill the gap of doing payroll and benefits, and keep her on until the end of October also.
Any questions? Is that a hand? No. Okay, thank you, Chuck. Actually, it looks like you got one more.
Sorry, can I ask one question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you explain to us why this is expedited, please?
For one important reason, if I can expedite it, this is the last meeting before the budget. I can get the budget correct for next year, okay? If I wait till after the budget, that becomes a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So next one is RL
185. 185. This is for the recreation park ice rink. NYSEG donated 10 light poles over there, and this is just accepting that donation of 10 light poles.
Any questions? Thank you, Chuck. Okay, we're moving on to Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hello.
You have RL 21-184.
Yes. So this is to sell the vacant city-owned lot at 28 Lion Street to Greater Opportunities to support the housing project at 3949 Munsell Street. Greater Opportunities will use the lot for parking and a driveway to access the Munsell Street housing project, which will create 18 units of housing.
Any questions for Megan? Councilwoman Riley?
Council President, so currently this is a residential plot, or is it already zoned commercial?
No, I believe it's residential. There's a standing building there now, an apartment building.
Okay.
So this is part of that project that will rehab 4 blighted vacant buildings on the north side. We had an RL last month, but it's the Munsell Street property, Moffett Ave, Way Street, and 4 Sturges.
Okay. So, but the property, the residential unit houses enough residents so that it's commercial, right?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I do know that the parking is a requirement, so that could be the case, Councilwoman.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Thank you, Megan. And next we have Mr. Carson back there. Hi, Steve.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. You have RL 21-182.
Correct. So we have come back to council several times with Finn and the YWCA's budgets in regards to the COVID ESG funds. This is sort of a realization that at this point we should just redo the contracts because we keep coming with amendments. And the reason for this, it's basically been a moving target the whole time. The ESG COVID funds were severely limited by the moratorium, which is still in giant question mark. What's the current status? I couldn't tell you. I know that we hear that it's been, either unconstitutional or it's been voided, and then there's an additional debate over whether something else will come from the state to change things. So the issue is that we had a ton of money set up, ready to respond as soon as the moratorium ended, in expectation of the moratorium ended, and it still hasn't. But at the same time, HUD in their infinite wisdom decided that when the ESG COVID funds originally came out, that we had to spend 20% of both ESG rounds 1 and 2 by the end of September, and that's actually expended. So at this sort of last minute scramble and in communications with the COC, we did find out that there was an eligible COVID homeless thing we could do, and that was to provide additional funds to the YWCA to mimic or to parallel the DSS's hotel placement program to get homeless people off the streets and into hotels for temporary periods of time. Now, temporary is kind of a weird thing with COVID. It could be a month, it could be 2 months, so it is kind of a confusing thing. But the YWCA is confident they can spend $120,000 of additional funds not this month, next month, by the end of the month, if we provide it to them, which is one of the reasons I've asked for this to be expedited, because if it can be approved at the Wednesday meeting, I should hopefully have a contract done and signed within a day after that, and they could start spending the money immediately. The source for those funds is not from any other source, it's just a reshuffling of the Finn's contract that we're still waiting. It's just sitting there. They can't spend it because of the moratorium. Now, at the same time, with this RL, I am asking that we should go ahead and split off the CDBG funds, which are going to Finn, which they are spending now, from the ESG. So we'll make this a clean break and create 3 new contracts. And at the same time, I also asked Finn, after receiving their last claim that looks like they were overspending on a line, I said, well, go ahead and tell me where you want those lines shuffled if it's going to council. Let's try to make this the last amendment we have to do for this contract. Are there any questions?
Yep, there is. Councilman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. Hello there, Mr. Carson.
Hi.
Is there any way, I know in the original proposal, we did talk about a percentage going to support employees and services.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way we can, are they dependent upon our continued support of, is that part of, are we expected with this new tranche to continue to support the employees and the benefits, or can we add all of the funding to the direct rehousing and or hotel services, room rental?
That is a good question. I wouldn't be able to answer it because it's dependent on what the Y has given me as a budget. I can tell you that the numbers there for the YWCA ESG COVID contract, is that the one you're talking about, correct? I said, what can you do with $120,000? They said, give us $8,000 for, was it 8,000? No, 12,000 for 10% for administrative costs, and the rest is going directly to the room rentals. Nothing else is being changed around. This is still based off of their sort of existing budget. So they've not asked for any additional for any salaries other than a 10%, a reasonable 10% for administrative expenses. Does that answer your question on that?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
And we do have round two. When you say tranche, I've been hearing that in regards to ESG round two. We will get those contracts done hopefully very soon as well once HUD approves the contract. So those will be additional contracts as well. I believe we've already come to council on that, but I'm not sure. I'll double check. And if not, I'll definitely will come to you guys on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So Janine, now we're moving on to pending legislation, or, I'm sorry. I don't know, I'm looking at Janine.
Yes.
I'd like to hear from Janine now.
I know. So we do have the 3 items that we held over at the last meeting, and those are on here. I will say one item that's on here that we won't be voting on Wednesday is RL 21-168, amending the code for public comment. Obviously, that needs more time to redo, and Councilman Scaringi requested that it not be expedited, so we can...
I have a point of clarification for that. Do we have to formally revoke our sponsorship of that RL so that it's not on the agenda for Wednesday, or no? Because we've signed out a version
Was it
of
signed
and
out? Yeah, then you need to take your signatures off.
So is that okay? Do I have verbal
Yeah, there was
permission
no
for you guys to-
legislation though to actually, what was signed out? Was there actual legislation?
There was an RL that
There
came
was an
down.
RL page, yeah. Because
Okay.
when I presented it, I was under the impression that it could be simply, that it was.
Okay, but that got
How-
signed out?
Right, then that was
If-
my own
If that
fault for
received the
thinking
signatures,
that
then it has
something
to be,
in
the
government could
signatures
be
have to come
simple,
off.
But, just kidding.
And just the other items that are on here for Wednesday.
Unless there are any comments on any of these items? Councilman Scaringi.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to let the body know the Rules and Special Studies Committee meeting met earlier today at 5 p.m. And we had a very robust discussion regarding the RL that Councilwoman Friedman brought forward. The committee, which is comprised of Councilwoman Friedman, Councilman Strawn, and myself, we were also joined by Councilwoman Riley and Councilman Burns. It was motioned and unanimously supported to move forward the information that was provided to us by Corp Counsel to the general body to have a full RL drafted by Corp Counsel, but I do also want to put on the record now I won't ask for that to be expedited, so it allows us for that full 2 weeks whenever Corp Counsel sends that down. So I just wanted to let you know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.